Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Clark 5 Talks, a podcast where you can hear the stories, the ideas, and the innovations behind some of the greatest entrepreneurs right here in our backyard. Today we have a very special guest star, Corey Wright, who's going to tell you his experience in starting a board game company. So tell us about what kind of company you've started. I know like the tip of the iceberg of it, just from what you've told me, but it sounds like an amazing thing. Are you into board games at all?
Oh yeah, our family,
Okay.
like that's all we do other than watch movies for fun. We play board games, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Massif Games is something that I started actually, to give you a little background, I originally studied chemistry and I was working at a biotech company in Corvallis, right? And eventually I realized that I really enjoyed entrepreneurship and I didn't want to be in a lab all the time. And so I had a feeling that the company was going down, and so I left early, sold my stock options, paid off my college loans, and took my wife to Europe for 3 months, backpacked around Europe.
Yeah.
And while I was in the French Alps, we had been playing some board games like Catan and some other low-key but fun games. A lot of people, the first board game they think of is Monopoly. We are past that, in things like Catan and Splendor is another one. So anyways, hiking through the French and Swiss Alps of Europe, and I have this idea. I was like, what if you could play Catan, but instead it was like a mountain, but it was like a different mountain every time, which is referred to as modular design in board games.
Okay.
Where you have basically it's always a new game experience in a sense, or a new map. And so I was like, interesting. So then, fast forward, sitting on an island in Greece, and I had a little notepad. I started sketching out ideas. I may or may not have very many clothes on. There's a lot of sunshine around, beautiful experience, private beach.
Just naked on
and
the beach.
and I started sketching out some ideas for this game idea. And fast forward, come back to the USA, hanging out, looking. Okay, should I apply for jobs? Start making some prototypes. Start talking with my wife, and what I realized is like, okay, one. I want to be an entrepreneur and I want to get involved in business and entrepreneurship. Two, I could go to school and learn about that, but I don't really want to go back to school again. I don't really want to have a ton of debt.
Amen.
It seems like most of the successful entrepreneurs I know, their education didn't really affect their success or failures. Maybe we should start something out of this. So I made a prototype, and it was complete garbage. It would fall apart the moment you touched it. It was pretty bad. It was like a race game where the first person to get to the top wins, and it was extremely boring. But I showed it to people, and people were really excited about it, and they're like, "Whoa, that's so cool! You should keep working on that." I showed it to some people working with startups in Corvallis, and they're like, "Oh, I think you have something here." I'm like, "Okay, well, some business people who know nothing about board games think I have sort of a unique product here. Maybe I should try it." So that's sort of how Massif Games came to be. We're basically a board game publisher. We make physical board games as well as different game accessories for other publishers and game stores. So we have these unique stands that I invented, trays that help people with disabilities or children be able to play board games and see their cards and store their components, things like that. So we have a couple different products that we've developed. Have done 3 Kickstarters with the company, 2 successful, 1 failure. Actually had failures with all of them, so I learned a lot of lessons. Been in business 4 years and sort of at a point where we're not sure where we're going to go next. But the main goal I had in starting the company was to learn about entrepreneurship and other than a lot of time spent, not lose a bunch of money in learning about it. And I think that's happened.
Yeah. So you had 3. 2 of them didn't work out. Mm-hmm. 1 of them did. They're all 3 different games. Mm-hmm. Similar games or very different games?
Very different products.
I'm interested to know what you think from that experience. What was it that worked? What didn't? Why did some of them fail? Why did some of them work out? Do you have an idea you think of why that would be?
Yeah, the number one rule in crowdfunding is you have to bring a crowd with you for the product you're trying to fund. Oh. So with Mountaineers, I raised $147,000 in 1 month for that game. That was the success. Mountaineers.
Mountaineers, okay.
Yeah, so if you just go to massifgames.com and search Mountaineers, you can see it there.
Cool.
That I brought my crowd with me. I spent 2.5 years and $10,000 in credit card debt building up the audience and getting the word out and telling people about it and going to the biggest game shows in the world and showing it and demoing it and getting people to play it and tell me how bad it was and fixing it and getting them to play it again, right? I built up a community and a crowd with me. The other two products, the one that sort of succeeded, I barely did that, and I sort of cheated a little bit to make it succeed. The second one, great product, went viral on the internet, but I didn't spend as much time building my audience for it and knowing who exactly my customers were for that particular product, which is why, it probably maybe would have succeeded, but I just cut it off after raising like $20,000 because I realized like I wasn't going to make a lot of money on it, and I wanted to have it be more of a exciting thing with like people coming to it automatically and not having to push really hard to get it. So
sure.
Interesting. So building that audience was physically going to gaming conventions and things like that to find these people, or was there a digital component to it or anything else?
Well, yeah, sure. There's a digital component. So, creating different social media and sort of inviting people to experience the process of building something that looks like shit the first time and then looks amazing finally. Maybe it sort of looks amazing now. Also going to board game conventions, using influencers is really critical. So sending out copies to people who review board games professionally and as hobbies and letting them share about it with their friends.
Do they use like YouTube, or is that the kind of...
Yeah, YouTube. There's still a lot of written blogs actually in the board game industry. Something called Board Game Geek is really good for looking up board games. Actually, I don't enjoy the website, but there's a ton of gamers on there, so it's a good platform to be on a little bit.
Well, it's kind of neat, your story, because you were climbing the Swiss Alps, and now you've got a board game called Mountaineer, which I'm guessing is it like your real life experience in a board game? I mean, tell me a little bit about Mountaineer.
A little bit. It's called Mountaineers, and it's really it has a lot of one thing I can be proud of is I think I implemented the theme of mountaineering pretty well into it, or really just outdoor adventure. Essentially in the game you choose a character. Each character has different abilities, just like in real life. Different people have different strengths and weaknesses. And then you upgrade that character with different types of gear, and you try to climb different routes and be the first to complete these routes successfully. And one route might be climbing to the top, another one might be climbing on rock, another one might be visiting a waterfall on each side of the mountain, various things like that. And so you try to complete those in order to have the most points. Basically, it's about climbing efficiently and not getting too much gear, but not having too little, and knowing when to rest and knowing when to climb and all of that. And that's sort of how you determine the winner. So yeah, it does implement, not my life story per se, but it really implements the feel that you have when you're climbing.
Interesting. So just real quick, while I was thinking about that modular design, I don't play a ton of board games. I end up playing a lot with my kids, so it ends up being, we played Trouble yesterday, or like Uno or card games like that. But I like to play Carcassonne, which, is that a modular game?
Yeah,
Would that be described as, because every time you play, everybody changes where they put each of the pieces, so every single game is entirely different, although played the same way, right? So is that the concept behind that?
Yeah.
I love games like that. That's great, because it's never the same. Weirdly, the same people always win, though. So that's, which is never me.
Well, if you play Mountaineers, you might actually beat me, and I created the dang thing. So,
so there's no secret to it. That's cool. That's good to know.
Yeah. Well, okay. So, in regards to developing your business, the journey that you've gone on, I'm sure you've talked about some of the challenges with funding and getting out there. Bringing your crowd with you, but what would you say is the top challenges from development, idea, manufacturing, to getting marketing and selling? What are some of the biggest challenges that you've faced in your entrepreneurial journey?
Yeah, good question. Well, there's a lot of different things that I could have and would have done differently. I think taking on too much and trying to put too many features into a product is one of the things I wish I could go back and really simplify, like the Kickstarter campaign I did, not make it worldwide, literally, but maybe limit it to like the EU and the USA as far as where we're doing fulfillment to.
Okay.
And then obviously being able to execute a little faster, because the longer it takes to like build a product, you have postal and freight rates go up. All of a sudden you have tariffs from China that you're like hoping to avoid, right?
Oh, right.
So there can be a lot of different things that you're not necessarily anticipating if you don't have any experience that can affect things. But probably, you know, staying focused and making it simple is a key challenge. And then I mean, funding. I was fortunate enough to where my wife was able to work while I worked full time on Massif Games, and so that was able, with a little bit of credit card debt and some luck, I was able to do some things right. But then I sort of did it opposite of what a lot of people in the board game industry do. Typically, you sort of start it out as you have a hobby, you're working on a game, maybe you've been developing it for like 5 or 10 years. And then you start to do one campaign, you release it, and it's successful, and then you grow a little more, and then eventually you sort of go over to full-time in the game industry. So I sort of did the opposite. I just went full in, not knowing anything about the game industry for the first like 2.5, 3 years. And then after that, okay, my wife's like ready to like, you know, settle down, start a family, have kids. Well, someone's got to pay the bills. A startup almost never pays the bills right away, right? It takes who knows how long to where you can pay yourself a salary. And so now I'm in the point where I don't have enough time because I'm working this, you know, other jobs in order to pay the bills. And so I feel like Massif Games is sort of like, oh, what's going on with it? So, you know, at the point where it's like, okay, you need to bring on some co-founders, or what I'm looking at now is basically like selling or licensing the products we've created to a bigger publisher. Because it's also important to know yourself. And one of the things I've realized is I'm an innovator and I'm a starter, but I'm not necessarily someone who wants to like grow a company to that next level. And so knowing what you enjoy and what you're good at versus what you can let someone else do. And it's okay if you don't have all the hats on, you know?
Yeah, that's super important to be able to understand your strengths, and instead of trying to become good at everything, lean into the thing that you're good at and find other people to do the other stuff. So that's smart. That's a smart approach. Hopefully you're surrounded by people who can be honest with you and can say, I've been watching you work. I noticed you're a starter. You know, you're not a process guy, let's say at the end, or a systematic guy or whatever that is, and be able to tell you, like, I think this is a good fit for you. Yeah.
People that surround you. That's a good. Who would you say has been most influential in your Massif? And it's, how do you spell that?
Massif.
Okay, that's
so
right.
Massif. It's a French word that means mountain, but it's where we derive in English the word massive out of. So it's a play on words, because I make really big game products that look like mountains, so it's both.
That's cool.
And what's the website again?
Massifgames.com.
Great.
So,
who's been your big supporters in this process?
obviously my wife. She's been amazing at supporting, helping me get it off the ground, play testing, doing a lot of little things that just were really helpful. You know, spending hours cutting out prototypes with razor blades and home painted cardboard by hand, which if you look at my game, you'll realize how tedious that is. There's a gal, Anna Walsh, who used to work with the OSU Advantage Accelerator. She was a really big supporter early on in helping me just learn basic things and get going. One of my friends who's like a much bigger board game geek than I am, Jordan Magnuson, helped with a lot of the play testing. And then after that, really just having family support and there's a lot of great like Facebook groups and communities around board game design and doing Kickstarter creation. And so just leveraging and using them. Someone named Jamie Stagmeyer, who is a really successful publisher, read his books and followed his blogs and learned a lot of great stuff from him. So those are some of the key individuals that really helped me have some of those successes.
Awesome. You know, Facebook groups, I think, has become just an incredible resource. I'm on there for different groups that, you know, of interests, and it's free, and there's so many people, and you can ask questions. I love Facebook groups. Do you use them at all?
Yeah, I use them quite a bit. It's amazing how much people are willing to share information. I think back a lot to like what it must have been like 20 years ago. You know, when you had to actually learn this stuff on your own and just figure it all out. I don't know how many times a day I end up telling people, well, just Google that. I'm sure Google knows that. Or like, go out to this Facebook group. I'm sure there's somebody out there that can help you, because everybody's willing to help each other now. I think it's because we're realizing that the more you help other people, your network gets larger. The larger your network gets, the more of a safety net you have, and the more access you have to people in the future that could be really helpful for you. I find a lot that somebody that I didn't think had value from a business sense, now, a year and a half later, I suddenly go, oh, I'm so glad I know them, and then they're there to fill a void before. So that whole kind of Facebook giving back to the community thing, I think is great.
I mean, I've seen board games on shelves that I seen, I don't know, 20 years ago. So if you got something that people are raving about, man, that'd be cool to see your board game like 10 years from now. If you go through that process, still seeing it on a shelf or just seeing it in a picture or something, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That'd be a sense of pride.
It would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
The thing you don't realize, for every like board game you see on a shelf 10 years later, there's probably 10,000 board games that aren't on the shelf. Every year, people create more than 6,000 board games worldwide.
Oh.
It's an insanely saturated
like new
industry.
To the market board
like
games?
New to the market, new ideas. Some of them get 500 copies printed, some of them end up with 100 copies printed, and a few of them get several thousand. And even the ones that get several thousand, whether or not they'll be in production 10 years from now is sort of hit and miss. So it's an insanely saturated industry. So if I were to stay in the board game industry, I mean, obviously I'm trying to exit it so I can just focus on the creation side, but if I were to remain a board game publisher, probably what I would do to remain future-proof is start looking into using augmented reality with physical board games, because that's a new experience that no one's really done yet in that.
Yeah.
But that requires team members that so far I haven't found yet. So
Okay, that's a neat concept.
Yeah, now I'm like, okay, I want to see what he does next.
Yeah.
I
would play that game. I would play that game.
How cool would that be? Like a tabletop game that had some kind of virtual reality?
Exactly. So imagine you have like a board on the table, right?
Yeah.
And you got your guys and your competitors have their guys. Yeah. And let's say you move your guys around that board and then you pick up your phone and look at it, and then all of a sudden your guys do something in the phone that only you and maybe one other person can see. Then you put your phone back down, it's the next person's turn. So you might be seeing what's happening in an alternate reality playing out based off of how the camera recognizes where your pieces are positioned on that physical board, right?
Yeah.
Because what people love about board games is that they're physical and you get to touch them. They have this tactile feel.
Yeah.
That's why even in spite of video games, they're still around and growing 20% a year in the market, right? But you have this really cool aspect of technology that allows you to create really unique mechanisms, potentially use artificial intelligence or whatever to create unique gaming experience. So if you can marry that with the physical, being able to sit across from someone and be in person in a room and have an experience, you can create some cool products.
Well, I'm going to tell any listener that you guys have got to follow this guy, because that's going to come out. He's already thought about it through this conversation. It's probably going to happen now. And we're going to follow him because now we know you. So we're going to be first on your Kickstarter for when you do this game.
Yes.
So you guys need to follow him. You have it, so they can get on your email list at massifgames.com.
Correct.
Okay.
And then if you want to follow us, we're on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and it's just at Massif Games.
And for buying the games themselves, is it just online, or are there physical stores or anything like that?
There's a few physical stores that you can get them at, and then one of my fulfillment companies, they carry them around to some of the bigger game conventions for me. But yeah, massifgames.com is the best place to just go buy it. We sell in both Europe and the USA. Shipping's pretty cheap in both of those regions, so yeah. And if anyone's listening, if you just put in all caps Friends of Corey discount, then you get like 10% off or something. So
okay, I'm gonna write that down. We're friends right now, so
and that's Corey, Corey.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh man, I'm excited about that. Okay, I also wanted to just ask you to kind of wrap things up. If you were to give advice to someone who's looking to start their own board game idea, they're on the precipice of, I've got an idea, but should I? What would help them in their beginning launch? What kind of resources should they seek if they're in that stage?
Yeah. Great question. I guess first of all, I would say determine what you really want out of the experience of creating a board game. Like, are you wanting to create a company? Are you wanting to create a product that other people can enjoy? Do you just enjoy the design experience, right? Because that can sort of determine how you approach that process.
Yeah.
Are you looking to learn? Are you looking to make money? If you're looking to learn, go for it. If you're looking to make money, that could be a tough, long path. So be prepared for like a 10-year long haul, right?
Okay.
And then secondly, I would recommend just start. Like what I did that's different to every other person that has a board game idea, because I swear everyone has a board game idea, is I actually started creating it and making my really crappy looking prototypes and showing them to people. So you just have to start. And then finally, there's a lot of great Facebook groups. There's what's it called? Board Game Publishers Guild. There's Kickstarter creators group.
Get connected.
Just get connected. Check out blogs on Board Game Geek. Check out Jamie Stagmeyer's blog. He's with Stonemeyer Games. Go to a trade show and see the thousands of amazing games out there and determine if you want to try to be in that trade show with everyone else, because there's a lot of really high quality products. And that would be my first recommendations, I guess. And then always play test and talk to your customers. So don't forget that part.
Know your customers. Good advice.
Very cool.
Good advice. Well, so this is Clark 5 Talks. We're here today, with Corey. And Corey, I want to thank you for coming down here, talking about your journey. It is honestly inspiring, not only where you came from, but where you're going. I'm excited about it. So thank you for being here with us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah.
I think your kid, you said you're like 10 and 13.
They're 9.
Or 9.
9 and 7. They're getting pretty close to being able to do it.
Like, they're right on the cusp of my game. So they'll have fun. You'll probably beat them, but they'll have fun.
That's exactly the way I want it to be.
Yeah, that's optimal.
I want them to be able to play and have fun, and then I want to crush them at the end.